Hi, happy Tuesday. We are going to be talking about low prep reading activities. So, if you've been kind of following along, you've been seeing that roughly once a week I've been trying to go live and share different ideas for activities you can do with any reading. And most of them I've been trying to share are things that you literally just hand your students a piece of paper and the reading and you're good to go, or give them a piece of paper and project the reading on the screen and you're good to go. The first four are all kind of variations on each other, and so I tried to think of a clever name to I don't have one. I got nothing. So I just call these, well, I'm gonna list them: read and draw, listen and draw, listen right to draw, and listen and write. So read and draw is exactly what it sounds like. You give your students a reading, or even just a paragraph of a reading if you've got a longer text you're working with, and your students have is this a blank sheet of paper? Look, a blank sheet of paper, and I just have them draw a line and draw 6 boxes, and they're basically doing a storyboard. So they're going to read and they're going to draw pictures to illustrate what happens. And if you want to, you could divide the text up together. So you could say, okay, these are going to be box 1, these are going to be box 2, or you can let them decide on their own what's going to go in each box, because that's an additional kind of comprehension piece, right? You can see how do they choose to split up the story to retell it visually. And you can do this quickly. You can do this in you could give them a pretty long, I wouldn't say a whole class period, but you can give them a pretty long chunk of class to let them draw and make them look nice. Because once you have the drawings, you can use them in other reading activities again later down the road. So listen and draw. So instead of giving your students the reading and telling them to take out a sheet of paper to draw, you have the reading in front of you and you just read a sentence or read a chunk out loud. And you give them a little bit of time to think about it and to kind of process, and a set amount of time to draw. So they're listening to you reading a selection and they're doodling, an illustration of what happened. I found it helpful to have a timer up on the screen. So each sentence or each chunk gets I don't know, up to you. You can do 2 minutes, you can do 3 minutes, a good visual representation of how much time they have to work with. And I also like to repeat the sentences a couple of times, or the chunks. So maybe it's, okay, we're on chunk 1 and I'll say it again, and then I'll give them a little bit of time to be working. And then we're about halfway through the timer on the screen, I might read it again. And then maybe if we have 20 seconds left, I might read it one more time. And then I just have them, I tell them as they're working, listen, double check, make sure your drawing matches. Okay, say you finished your drawing, what details can you go back and add? All of that. And you want to be able to keep those drawings, because later it's really nice to be able to reuse the stuff that they've created for other activities, right? So in a way, this activity that's low prep, no prep can be used to prep for other things that maybe are a little bit more prep, okay? Next one, and like I said, all 4 of these are kind of variations on each other. I just call it listen, write, draw. So now we're just adding a step. And I do like to give students a handout for listen, write, draw. It just helps them be a little bit more organized. And I have pictures of this on my blog, what I've written about this activity before. But just so you have a visual, because I didn't print this sheet out for you, I should have. It's basically that single line, 6 boxes, and underneath each box, I just have a space for them to write. So just a table would work really well. Pick out a sentence, or you pick out a chunk of text and you say it out loud for your students. I usually say it out loud 3 times if I'm expecting them to write it down. Slowly, give them enough time to write, okay? And I will go through all of the sentences. So they're listening and writing. They're listening, they're writing. They're listening, they're writing. And then when we're all done with the listen and writing portion, then they can go back and draw, okay? This one is really nice to do independently. So this is one of those ones that I have kind of earmarked for days if I need a sub plan, or I'm just not feeling well and I need something a little bit lower energy, or maybe Like my Spanish 2 is doing something that like really requires a lot from me, and I want Spanish 1s to do something that's like a little bit less. This is a really good one because you can record yourself saying the sentences and then post them in your LMS, and your students can listen to them as many times as they want in order to write them down and then illustrate them. And you can do this, I call it a reading activity. You could do this with grammatical chunks. One of my favorite units to do listen, write, and draw in is when we do la ciudad and prepositions of location. And I have a bunch of different sentences that focus on the different prepositions and the different like buildings and streets, and they have to illustrate the city as they're listening. So again, I have a whole blog post on listen, write, and draw. I'll make sure to link it in the description. The last one is listen and write, which is basically classic dictation or just dictation. The students sit in their desks and they have a sheet of paper and they listen to you say a sentence and they try to write it as perfectly as they can. And I know a lot of times, right, we're focused on proficiency, we're focused on communication over perfection, but this is kind of one of those few times where I really encourage them to try their best to be as perfect as possible. And like I was saying before with listen, write, draw, I say the sentences multiple times. I give them a lot of time to think about it. So I don't want the students to be like scribbling it through or, whatever. This is something that when I do a classic dictation in class, 30 minutes for like 10 sentences, pretty easily, okay? So we'll say the sentence, they listen and they write it. We go all the way through it. Once we get through all 10 sentences, I usually do about 10, what I do is I will either project the answers on the screen one at a time, or just on like the whiteboard or the chalkboard, right, depending on your classroom, I'll write like one and we'll go through it together and I'll say it out loud again and I'll write it out for them. And then as the students are like correcting it, they're going to either put a star next to it if it's perfect, or in a space underneath it, they're going to rewrite the sentence so that it is perfect. This is an activity that I think I read Keith Toda's blog. I can't remember. For some reason, I'm like totally comprehensible, maybe. I will link it. I'll link it below. I know I have the link to where I originally learned about this activity. I'll make sure to grab that, and then I'll put that in the description as well for you so you can learn from him. All right. That was read and draw, listen, write, draw, and listen and write. If you have any questions at all, if you're catching the replay and you're like, wait, what was she talking about? I'm here, so you can grab the comments, drop a comment, or drop your questions. I will put links to the listen, write, draw, and like the running dictation template, and my link on any blog post that I mentioned in this video. I'll make sure to put the link in it. All right, thanks so much. I hope this was helpful for you. Again, if you have any questions at all, please don't hesitate to ask. Have a wonderful rest of your night.